My name is Graham Holloway, and the last time I saw my son-in-law in public, he laughed in my face, slapped a folded check out of my hand, and said loud enough for half the damn room to hear, "Put it back in your wallet. Old man, I don't take charity from broke nobodies." Yeah, he said that. In the middle of the Millstone Falls Community Center, under those harsh fluorescent lights that make everybody look sick and guilty, right in front of a table full of PTA moms, a couple off-duty cops, and the pastor's wife clutching her casserole dish like she might use it as a weapon. And then, because apparently humiliation wasn't enough, he shoved me back with 2 fingers like I was a crooked coat rack, and I stumbled into the refreshment table. Coffee flew. A whole tray of cookies hit the floor. My hands went numb for a second, that old arthritic lightning shooting through my knuckles, and I just stood there blinking while people stared like they'd caught a car wreck in slow motion. My grandson wasn't there. My granddaughter was. Little Maddie, 7 years old, sitting on a folding chair near the wall with her backpack in her lap, watching her own father act like I was something he scraped off his boot. She didn't cry. She didn't move. She just looked at me with those wide, careful eyes, like she'd been waiting for me to finally see what she already knew. Logan Price turned his head toward her, saw her staring, and his voice dropped, sharp and nasty. "Stop looking like that," he snapped. "Don't start your little pity act." Then he leaned in closer to me, smiling like a man who thinks the world owes him interest. "Here's the deal," he whispered, but not quiet enough. "You want to play Grandpa Hero? Fine. But don't you ever embarrass me in front of people again. You're not family. You're a bank." A bank, not a father-in-law, not a grieving old man, not the guy who kept their lights on and their fridge full when Logan's job opportunities kept magically disappearing. A bank. I stood there in that sticky coffee smell, feeling the heat crawl up my neck, feeling my pulse thump in my ears like a warning siren. I wanted to swing. I wanted to grab him by the collar and remind him I wasn't always old. But I didn't, because Maddie was watching. And when a kid is watching, you don't let your worst self take the wheel. So I bent down, picked up that crumpled check he'd slapped to the floor, and I wiped coffee off my sleeve with shaking fingers like a man cleaning up after his own execution. And Logan? He just smirked like he'd won. "January," he said, turning away. "Don't be late this time." That was the part that nearly made me laugh. January, like he was reminding a waiter about a refill. I walked out of that community center with my shoes sticking to the floor from spilled coffee, my pride bruised, and that cold, quiet realization settling into my ribs. 7 years. I'd been paying this man for 7 years. Not legally, not officially, just emotionally, financially, like some idiot who thought loyalty was a moral virtue instead of a target on your back. And the reason I paid? The reason I kept writing those checks every January, even when my hands were swollen and my back felt like a rusty hinge? Because I believed my daughter was dead. I believed Sierra was gone in a fire on a 2-lane stretch of highway outside town, the kind of road everybody swears they know by heart until it kills somebody they love. They told me her car went off the shoulder. They told me it hit a tree. They told me the fire was so bad there couldn't be an open casket. They gave me ashes in a brass urn. They told me to say goodbye, so I did. And my wife did too until she couldn't. My wife, June, died 6 months after the funeral. Doctors called it cardiac arrest. I called it what it was, grief. She faded like a photo left in the sun. First she stopped eating. Then she stopped laughing. Then she started waking up at night gasping like she'd forgotten how air worked. One morning, I found her on the kitchen floor next to the coffee maker, hand still reaching like she was trying to grab something that wasn't there anymore. I sat on the tile beside her, my knees screaming, and I whispered her name over and over like a prayer that refused to work. After that, it was just me and Maddie, and Logan, who wore black at the funeral and cried exactly 2 tears, one per cheek, perfectly timed, then went back to living like the world owed him compensation for the inconvenience of being a widower. And me? I did what older men do when their hearts get ripped out, and they don't have the luxury of falling apart. I kept moving. I ran my little store, Holloway Market, on the corner of Alder and Pine, the kind of place that still smells like oranges and floor cleaner and old cardboard. The kind of place where the same people come in every week and tell you their medical problems like you're their priest. My hands are wrecked from 35 years of lifting crates and stocking shelves. My joints pop when I stand up. My fingers lock in the winter. Some mornings I can barely hold a coffee mug without pain shooting up my wrist. But I still open that store at 6 a.m. every day, because routine is how you survive when your house feels like a mausoleum. And every January, like clockwork, I sent Logan $40,000. $40,000 a year, not because Logan deserved it. God, no. Because Maddie did. Because Maddie was my granddaughter. Sierra's daughter. The last living piece of my girl. And in my head, every dollar was a brick in the wall I built around that kid. New clothes, school stuff, dentist, a better neighborhood, stability. That's what I told myself. That's what I needed to believe. Logan never gave me receipts. Never sent a breakdown. Never said, "Hey, here's what Maddie needs." Never invited me over for dinner. Never called just to talk. I got a text in January. Always the same tone. Transfer came through. Thanks. That was it. And I accepted it because grief makes you desperate. It makes you grateful for scraps. It makes you take disrespect and call it keeping the peace. Then came that quiet afternoon at Briarwood Park, the one that cracked everything open. Maddie and I had our routine. Every other Saturday. Same bench, same little ice cream cart by the playground, same sticky fingers and napkins that never do their job. I'd get chocolate chip. She'd get strawberry swirl. She'd swing her legs and tell me about school like I was her whole world. That day, the sun was low and warm. Late summer, pretending it wasn't about to die. The air smelled like cut grass and cheap sunscreen. Kids screamed on the jungle gym. Somewhere a dog barked like it had personal beef with happiness. Maddie was telling me she got an A on her spelling test. I told her I was proud, and she smiled. Same smile Sierra used to flash when she was trying to get away with something. For a second, I felt okay. Then Maddie's smile vanished like somebody flipped a switch. She leaned closer, her small hand gripping my sleeve hard enough to wrinkle my skin. "Grandpa," she whispered, and her voice sounded older than her body. "Please stop sending him money." I blinked, like maybe I misheard. "What?" "The money," she said, eyes flicking toward the playground, like she was scared Logan might appear behind the slide like a horror movie villain. "To my dad." My stomach tightened. "Maddie, why would you say that?" She swallowed. Her lower lip trembled, but she didn't cry. "Because he'll get mad," she whispered. "But you need to see." "See what?" She leaned in so close I could smell the strawberry on her breath. "Come to the house," she said. "Don't call. Don't tell him. Just come." My heartbeat got loud in my ears. That old instinct you get when you've lived long enough to recognize danger, even when it's wearing a polite face. "Maddie," I said softly, "is he hurting you?" Her eyes widened, and for half a second, I saw panic. "No," she whispered fast. Then she corrected herself, quieter. Not like hitting, but he gets scary." Scary. A 7-year-old doesn't use that word casually, not unless she's been living with it. I started to ask more, but she stood up fast, like the conversation itself was a crime. "I have to go," she said. "He'll be mad if I'm late." She grabbed her backpack, the one with glitter stars and a broken zipper, and she looked down at me like she was begging me without saying it. "Please," she whispered. "Just watch." Then she walked toward the parking lot, small shoulders stiff, like she was bracing for a storm only she could see. I sat there on that bench with my ice cream melting down my hand, staring at my granddaughter's back as she walked away. And suddenly that community center humiliation didn't feel like the worst thing Logan had ever done. It felt like a warning shot. I waited 10 minutes before I got in my truck, not because I wasn't worried, because I was trying to convince myself I wasn't about to do something insane. Because the truth is, part of me was still clinging to the old story. My daughter died. My wife died. Logan is the grieving father. I'm the helpful grandfather. That's the story I lived in for 7 years, because the alternative was too ugly to imagine. But as I drove down Maple Hollow Road toward Logan's place, my hands tight on the steering wheel, Maddie's words kept repeating in my head like a chant. Stop sending him money. Come to the house. Don't call. Just come. And for the first time in 7 years, I wasn't driving there as a helper. I was driving there like a man about to learn what his money was really buying. I didn't park in the driveway. That would have been polite. Predictable. The kind of move Logan could smell coming a mile away. Instead, I parked 2 houses down behind a row of overgrown hedges, killed the engine, and sat there with my heart thudding against my ribs like it wanted out. My hands were still sticky from melted ice cream, and that tiny detail made me furious. Like even the universe was reminding me I'd been doing grandpa errands while something rotten grew in the dark. I watched Logan's house like it was a crime scene, a plain 2-story in a cookie-cutter neighborhood. Gray siding, black shutters. One of those yards that always looks half-finished, not messy enough to call neglect. Just lazy, like the owner couldn't be bothered. Funny, I helped with the down payment on that house. I remember the check. I remember the way Logan shook my hand too hard when he got it, like dominance was baked into his bones. Appreciate it, he'd said. Not thank you, just appreciate it. The memory tasted sour. A few minutes later, Logan's car pulled in. He got out, still wearing that smug, office casual uniform, like he was some kind of respectable adult. He slammed the door harder than necessary. He always did that, like the world needed to hear he'd arrived. He didn't look around, didn't scan the street, didn't act like a man worried about a daughter or a family. He walked inside like a king returning to his castle. I waited 30 seconds, then got out of my truck. My knees complained the moment my feet hit pavement. Age doesn't show up politely. It makes its presence known like a rude guest. But I kept moving, one step at a time, down the sidewalk, up the walkway. I didn't knock. I walked to the side gate, the one that didn't latch right. I knew because I paid for the damn fence repair that never quite got fixed. I slipped into the backyard. The grass was too long. A plastic kitty toy lay on its side like it had been thrown. The back window curtains were half open, and I could see the kitchen light flickering slightly. That cheap bulb that needs replacing. I crept closer, slow and careful, feeling ridiculous, and also feeling something else. That old instinct, the one that says, you're about to see something you can't unsee. Through the window, I saw Maddie sitting at the kitchen table, backpack still on, pencil in hand. She was doing homework like a tiny employee clocked in for the night shift. Logan walked past her without even looking down. No, how was the park? No. Did you have fun with Grandpa? Nothing. He opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, and took a long pull like he'd earned it. Maddie's shoulders tightened, like she'd been trained to react to that sound. Logan turned, finally noticed her, and snapped. Why are you sitting there like a statue? Finish your worksheet. I don't need a call from your teacher again. I'm doing it, Maddie said softly. Do it faster, he barked. You want to end up stupid? Because that's how you end up stupid. My jaw clenched. I'd heard a lot of adults talk to kids in my lifetime. Most of it ranged from dumb to clumsy. But that was poison on purpose. Maddie's pencil moved faster. Her little hand was shaking. Logan leaned over her shoulder, and I saw him shove the paper slightly, hard enough that the table leg scraped the floor. That sound made Maddie flinch. Logan laughed. Not a big laugh. A small, God, you're jumpy, he said. You get that from your mother. Nervous little mess. My stomach twisted. The urge to kick the door in was immediate. Hot. Reckless. But I didn't, because Maddie told me to watch. So I watched. Logan walked away, phone in hand. He started talking. Casual. Too casual. Yeah, he said into the phone. January. That's when the old idiot sends it. Like clockwork. He's basically a pension with legs. I felt my chest tighten. He walked into the living room, still on the call, and I followed his voice through the window like a hunting dog. He thinks he's buying forgiveness, Logan said. Buying a place in my kid's life? It's adorable. Pause. Then he laughed again. No, I'm serious. He's so desperate to feel useful. All I gotta do is dangle the kid in front of him twice a month, and he'll keep wiring money until he drops. I could actually feel my pulse in my teeth. Maddie kept writing at the table, eyes down, like she'd learned to disappear. Logan's voice rose. Hey, you remember that little urn thing? He said, and my blood went cold. Still on his mantle. Yeah. Dude treats it like holy relic. I swear he might kiss it goodnight. Another pause. Then Logan said something that made my vision go narrow. I told you, it was easy. People believe whatever story makes them feel like a good person. He wanted a tragedy. I gave him one. I backed away from the window like the glass burned. My hands were shaking. I walked along the fence line to the back door and tried the handle. Locked, of course. Then I saw the garage side door. I stepped toward it, slow, careful, and I heard something inside. Not voices, not movement, just the dull rhythmic thump, like something being hit, or something hitting back. I leaned closer. Thump, thump, thump. My stomach dropped. I pressed my ear near the door, and then I heard it, a muffled sound. A woman's voice, not loud enough to make out words, but clear enough to know it wasn't a TV. My breath caught in my throat. There was a woman in that house, and Maddie had told me to stop sending money. My hand went to the doorknob. It was cold, metal, biting into my palm. I twisted. It opened, and the smell hit me first. Not blood, not rot. Something worse in its own way. Stale air, damp concrete, cheap perfume trying to cover mildew, and underneath it, a faint, bitter smell like burnt coffee. I stepped inside the garage, and the overhead light flickered once like it didn't want to expose what lived in here. The garage wasn't a garage. No car, no tools, no storage like normal families. Just a space cleared out, a thin mattress on the floor, a folding chair, a hot plate, a stack of bottled water, and duct tape, a whole roll sitting on a plastic tote like it belonged. My skin went cold. Then I saw the wall, photos, dozens of them. Maddie's school pictures, Maddie at the park, Maddie holding a pumpkin, Maddie smiling with a missing tooth, all taped up in a neat grid like somebody was building a shrine or a prison. And in the corner, curled on the mattress, was a woman, thin, too thin, dark hair pulled back messily, her face turned away from me. She heard the door creak and flinched like she'd been shocked. She sat up fast, eyes wide, terrified. And then she looked at me, and my heart nearly stopped beating because I recognized that face. Not because it was the same, but older, like someone had taken my daughter and dragged her through 7 years of hell and handed her back with different eyes. Her lips parted. Her voice came out in a whisper, cracked and raw. Dad? My knees went weak. I grabbed the doorframe to keep myself upright. No, I breathed. No, Sierra. Behind me, I heard the kitchen door slam, Logan's footsteps. Fast, his voice sharp and furious. What the hell are you doing in my house? I turned slowly, and the rage finally settled into place, cold and perfect. I held his stare, and for the first time in 7 years, I didn't feel like a bank. I felt like a man about to collect. Logan froze when he saw her, not surprised, not confused. Not shocked like a man who just got caught hiding a dead body or a second family. No, he looked annoyed, like a guy whose secret stash just got found by the wrong person at the wrong time. His eyes flicked from me to Sierra, then back to me. Calculating. Always calculating. "Get out of the way," he snapped. "You're not supposed to be back here." "Not Dad. You shouldn't be here." "Not what are you doing? Just, you're in my space." That was the moment the last thread snapped. I stepped fully into the garage, putting my body between him and her without even thinking. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs, but my voice came out steady, too steady. "She's alive," I said. "You told me she was burned to ash." Sierra was shaking behind me. I could feel it. Her fingers curled into the back of my jacket like she was holding on to the edge of the world. Logan exhaled through his nose. Slow, irritated. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "You really went snooping, huh? Typical." Then he smiled. That smug, crooked smile I'd seen 1,000 times when he thought he was smarter than the room. "Lower your voice," he said. "You're going to scare her." "Scare her," I laughed. A short, ugly sound that even surprised me. "You locked my daughter in a garage," I said. "You let my wife die thinking she lost her child. You stole $280,000 from me, and you're worried about my tone?" Sierra made a small sound behind me. Not a cry. More like a wounded animal trying not to be heard. Logan's smile vanished. "Don't act like you're innocent," he snapped. "She agreed to this." That stopped me. Slow burn. Cold heat. I turned just enough to look at Sierra. She shook her head immediately, eyes filling. "No," she whispered. I didn't know. "He told me I killed someone. He told me I'd go to prison. He said this was the only way to protect Maddie." Logan scoffed, loud, disgusted. "Oh, come on," he said. "You fell for it because you wanted to. You didn't want to be a mom. You didn't want responsibility. This was easy." I spun back on him so fast my vision went white for a second. "You lying sack of trash," I said. "You manipulated a terrified woman into thinking she was a murderer." Logan stepped closer. "Bad move. She's unstable," he said, pointing at Sierra like she was furniture. "Always has been. Anxiety, panic attacks. You remember, right? She was weak. I just redirected it. I saw red. Before I could stop myself, I grabbed the front of his jacket and slammed him back against the tool cabinet. Metal rattled. A hammer clanged to the floor. Sierra screamed. Maddie screamed from inside the house. That sound snapped me back just enough. Logan didn't fight back. He just laughed. Breathless, eyes bright. "There it is," he said. "The angry old man act. You think this changes anything?" I leaned in close enough that he could smell the coffee on my breath. "It changes everything." I released him and stepped back, hands shaking, chest heaving. 7 years, I said. 7 years I paid you. 7 years you played widower while you kept my daughter in a cage. Logan straightened his jacket, rolled his shoulders. "You paid because you wanted to," he said. "Nobody forced you." Then he delivered the line that sealed his fate. "And your wife?" he added casually. Her dying like that actually helped, made the story stick. People don't question a grieving old man. Sierra made a broken sound behind me. Something inside my chest cracked clean in half. I didn't touch him again. I pulled my phone out instead. "Hands steady now." "Say that again," I said. Logan laughed. "Say what?" "What you just said," I replied. "About my wife." He hesitated, just for half a second. Not because he felt guilt, because he smelled danger. "I said," he repeated slowly, "that tragedy sells. And your family? You were perfect marks." Click. I ended the call. Because I wasn't recording on my phone, I was live. Roger's voice came through my earpiece. Low and tight. "That's enough. We've got it." Logan's eyes flicked to my ear. "What the hell is that?" I smiled. And for the first time, he looked scared. Outside. Red and blue lights exploded against the garage door. Sirens. Multiple. Maddie's crying stopped mid-sob. Logan's mouth opened. then closed. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." The side door burst open. Police flooded the garage. "Hands up. Now." Logan spun, tried to bolt past them. He made it 3 steps. A deputy tackled him hard enough that his face hit concrete with a wet, final sound. Cuffs snapped shut. Sierra collapsed to her knees. I caught her before she hit the floor. An officer rushed to Maddie inside. Another draped a blanket over Sierra's shoulders. Logan screamed as they dragged him up. "You set me up!" he shouted at Sierra. "You stupid! Weak!" A boot pressed into his back. "Shut up!" an officer growled as they hauled him past me. Logan twisted his head and locked eyes with me one last time. "You think you won?" he spat. "You don't get those years back." I leaned down so only he could hear me. "No," I said, "but you're about to lose yours." They shoved him into the cruiser. The door slammed, and for the first time in 7 years, the garage felt like it could breathe. They didn't let me ride in the cruiser, which, honestly, was probably for the best, because if I'd been sitting 3 feet away from him, hearing him breathe, hearing him whine, I might have done something that would have made the evening news. So instead, I sat on the curb outside that garage with a blanket over Sierra's shoulders, my hands shaking like they belonged to somebody else. The night air smelled like damp asphalt and engine exhaust. The red-blue lights painted everything in frantic colors, like the world couldn't decide if it was angry or relieved. Maddie stood on the porch barefoot, crying so hard she hiccuped. An officer knelt in front of her, speaking softly, trying to be gentle, trying to be normal in a situation that would never be normal again. And that's when it hit me, right between the ribs. I didn't just find my daughter alive. I found out my granddaughter had been living inside a lie, 7 years of her life, shaped by a story designed to milk me like an ATM and keep Sierra quiet like a hostage. Sierra's fingers were wrapped around mine so tight my knuckles hurt, and she kept whispering, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Like she still believed she deserved punishment for surviving. I forced my voice calm. "You're done apologizing," I told her. "That's his job now." A detective approached. He looked exhausted already, like this case had aged him 10 years in 10 minutes. "We'll need statements," he said. "Tonight, if you can. But first, we're getting her medical attention, and we're placing the child with you temporarily." Temporarily? That word made my jaw lock. "Not temporarily," I said. "Permanently." He studied my face for a second, then nodded slowly like he understood exactly what kind of man I was. "We'll start the paperwork," he said. "But you need to understand, this is going to get messy." I looked at the garage again. That mattress, the duct tape, the photos. "Buddy," I said quietly, "it's been messy for 7 years. The only difference now is I'm the one holding the mop." The next 48 hours were a blur of fluorescent lights, stale coffee, and paperwork so thick it could have been used as armor. I gave my statement at the station, while Sierra sat in a small exam room at the hospital getting checked out. Maddie stayed with me, wrapped in my old coat, falling asleep sitting up like her body didn't trust sleep anymore. When the detective asked me about the money, I didn't guess. I didn't estimate. I pulled out my folder. Bank statements, transfer confirmations. Every January, 7 straight years, 40 grand each time. Notes I'd written in the margins like an idiot trying to prove I was a good man. $280,000. The detective's eyebrows lifted. "Why didn't you ever question it?" he asked. And I wanted to punch myself in the throat. "Because my wife died," I said. "Because my daughter was dead. Because I thought helping my granddaughter meant I was still connected to something living." The detective nodded slowly, then leaned forward. "You found the urn, right?" he asked. I swallowed. "Yeah." "What was inside?" I stared at the table for a second, then said it anyway. "Coffee grounds, cinnamon." He didn't react like it was weird. He reacted like it was evidence. "Good," he said. "We'll need that." That word, evidence, that's when the cold part of me woke up, because grief made me soft. Love made me generous. But evidence? Evidence is what turns pain into a weapon you can legally swing. That night, after I got Maddie to sleep on my couch with 3 different lamps on because she begged me not to turn the lights off, I sat at my kitchen table with Sierra across from me. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not just thin, worn down, like she'd been surviving on fear and stale air and guilt for so long her body forgot how to relax. She kept staring at her hands. "I didn't know about the money," she whispered. "I swear I didn't." "I know," I said. She flinched at the softness in my voice, like she didn't trust kindness anymore. "He told me," she started, and her throat caught. "He told me if I ever tried to leave, if I ever told anyone, he'd take Maddie away and tell her I abandoned her. He told me nobody would believe me." I leaned forward. "Then we're going to do something he didn't plan for," I said. "We're going to make sure everybody believes you." The revenge wasn't me screaming. It wasn't me swinging. It wasn't me doing something dumb and satisfying for 10 seconds. It was me going methodical, like a man balancing his books. Step 1 was the bank. The morning after the arrest, I walked into my local branch with my folder under my arm and my hands aching like always. The teller recognized me, smiled, started her usual small talk. Then she saw my face and stopped. I didn't sit. I stood at the counter and said, "I need fraud and wire transfer records. Everything tied to that man." Her smile vanished. Within 10 minutes, I was in a private office with a manager. The door closed, the air too cold, the fluorescent lights buzzing like a bad conscience. I slid my statements across the desk. 7 years of transfers. The manager's eyes widened. "That's consistent," she said slowly. "Like clockwork," I replied. She tapped her keyboard, pulled up transaction details, and her jaw clenched. "He moved a lot of this," she said. "Not into household expenses, not into childcare. It looks like luxury retailers, travel, and some large transfers out of state." Out of state, of course, because Logan didn't live like a single dad scraping by. He lived like a parasite that just learned how to wear a tie. I nodded. "Calm. Print it," I said. "All of it." Step 2 was family court, because I wasn't about to let Maddie be treated like a suitcase passed around while adults argued. I filed for emergency custody the same day. Sierra sat beside me in that courthouse hallway, knees bouncing, eyes darting every time a door opened, like she expected him to jump out with handcuffs and drag her back to the garage. I squeezed her hand. "He's not touching you again," I said. She swallowed hard. "You don't know what he's like when he's angry," she whispered. I leaned closer. "You don't know what I'm like when I'm done." Then came step 3, the reveal. Not the emotional one, the legal one, the kind that makes a smug man's face go gray in public. The arraignment was 2 days later. Courtroom packed. People love a downfall, especially in a small town where boredom is a sport. Logan walked in wearing orange jail clothing, shackles at his ankles, wrists cuffed, still trying to hold his chin up like he had dignity to spare. He looked right at me and smiled. That same stupid, confident smile, like he still thought he could talk his way out of oxygen. He leaned toward me as the deputies guided him past the bench. "This is a misunderstanding," he hissed. "You'll regret this. I swear to God." I didn't even blink. "You already said that," I murmured. "From the garage. It didn't work then either." He sneered. "You don't have proof," he whispered. "You've got feelings. That's it." And that's when I opened my folder. Not dramatically, not theatrical. Just calm. I pulled out the printed bank records and set them on the bench in front of me like I was laying down a weapon. Logan's smile wavered, because even from where he stood, he could see the thickness of that stack. The prosecutor stood up, and here came the visual shock that made half the room inhale at once. She held up a clear evidence bag. Inside it, a smaller bag of brown powder, coffee grounds, cinnamon flecks. The courtroom got quiet. Not polite quiet, horrified quiet. The prosecutor's voice was sharp. "This," she said, was presented to the victim as his daughter's cremated remains. Logan's head snapped toward the bag like he'd been punched. Sierra's hand tightened around mine so hard it hurt. The prosecutor continued, laying it out like a surgeon. False imprisonment, fraud, theft, identity manipulation, emotional coercion, child endangerment. And then she did the thing that finally broke him. She played the jailhouse call. Logan's voice, recorded, smug and nasty. "I'm not family. I'm a bank." The room reacted like somebody threw gasoline on a fire. Logan lurched forward, trying to speak, trying to interrupt, trying to spin it. The judge shut him down instantly. "Sit," the judge barked. "You will not grandstand in my courtroom." Logan's face did something strange then. Not anger, fear, because for the first time, the power wasn't in his mouth anymore. It was in the paperwork. He looked at me, eyes wide, and mouthed something I couldn't hear. Maybe why, maybe how, maybe please. I didn't care, because my revenge wasn't loud. It was permanent. The sentencing took less time than the lie. That's the part people don't expect. They think justice is some grand, cinematic moment where everything slows down and the bad guy begs. No, real justice is clinical, efficient, almost boring, until you realize what it means. Logan stood there in front of the judge, shackled, posture stiff, still wearing that expression like this was all some clerical error that would resolve itself if he complained loudly enough. The judge didn't raise his voice, didn't moralize, didn't lecture. He just read the facts. 7 years of fraudulent transfers, false imprisonment, psychological coercion, child endangerment, desecration of human remains. Each charge landed like a hammer. When the judge said the number, I felt Sierra's breath catch beside me. 15 years. No parole for the first 10. Restitution ordered in full. Parental rights terminated immediately. Logan finally reacted then. Not when they talked about Sierra. Not when they talked about Maddie. Not when they talked about my wife dying of grief. He reacted when they said money. He lunged forward in his chair, chains rattling, face red, shouting about appeals and lawyers, and how this town was too small-minded to understand him. The judge didn't even look at him, just nodded to the bailiff. And that was it. They took him away, kicking and cursing like a man dragged out of a bar at closing time, screaming that this wasn't over, that I'd ruined his life, that he hoped I enjoyed playing hero while it lasts. The door closed behind him with a heavy sound, and the room exhaled. Sierra didn't cry. Not then. She sat there very still, like she was afraid if she moved, someone would tell her it was all a mistake and send her back to the garage. It wasn't until the courtroom emptied, until the judge was gone and the spectators drifted out in quiet clusters, that she finally turned to me. "It's really over," she whispered. I nodded. "It is." She broke then, not screaming, not dramatic, just silent tears, shoulders shaking. 7 years of fear finally realizing it didn't have to stay on duty anymore. I wrapped my arm around her and held her like I should have been able to do 7 years ago. Maddie didn't come to court. I didn't want her anywhere near that building. She stayed with a social worker that morning, coloring dinosaurs and asking when she could go home. Home. That word finally meant something again. The next months were slow, hard, necessary. Sierra went to therapy 3 times a week at first. Some days she came home exhausted, like she'd run a marathon without moving her feet. Other days she barely spoke at all, just sat at the kitchen table staring at her hands like she didn't trust them yet. I didn't push. I'd learned the hard way that healing doesn't respond to pressure. Maddie had her own counselor, a gentle woman with soft eyes who explained things in words kids could hold without cutting themselves on. They didn't tell her everything. Not yet. She knew her dad had done bad things. She knew he wasn't coming back. She knew her mom hadn't abandoned her. That was enough for now. The rest could wait until her world was sturdier. The restitution money came in pieces. Logan had spent most of it. Shock of the century. But they recovered enough to matter. I didn't keep it all. I put half of it into a trust for Maddie. college, trade school, whatever future she decides she wants. I gave Sierra enough to start over without panic breathing down her neck. And the rest? I donated it to a local domestic abuse shelter under my wife's name, June Holloway, because she never got justice while she was alive. At least her name could help someone else survive. Holloway Market changed, too. Sierra started working there part-time, just mornings at first, stocking shelves, running the register, relearning what normal felt like. Customers noticed. Some asked questions. Most didn't. Small towns are funny like that. They'll gossip all day. But when something real happens, they suddenly develop manners. Maddie liked sitting on a milk crate near the counter doing homework, just like Sierra used to when she was little. The symmetry hit me one afternoon so hard, I had to step into the back room and breathe. Sundays became ours. Dinner at my house. Spaghetti, garlic bread. The recipe June used to make. The one Sierra remembered without even trying. We didn't talk about Logan. We didn't need to. That chapter was closed, sealed, buried properly this time. One evening, months later, Maddie sat at the kitchen table drawing while Sierra washed dishes. She looked up at me, serious. "Grandpa?" "Yeah, kiddo. Are bad people born bad?" That question carried weight. I took my time answering. "No," I said. "But some people decide it's easier to hurt others than fix themselves." She thought about that, nodding slowly like she was filing it away for later. Then she smiled. "I'm glad you didn't stop watching," she said. My throat tightened. So am I. That night, after Maddie went to bed and Sierra had gone home to her apartment, I stood alone in my living room. The mantel was different now. No urn, no lie dressed up as closure. Just a framed photo. June. Sierra. Me. Taken years ago at the county fair. Sunburned. Laughing. Alive. I touched the frame with my fingertips and finally said what I hadn't been able to say for 7 years. "I didn't fail you." And for the first time, I believed it. Here's the truth I learned the hard way. Evil doesn't always roar. Sometimes it smiles, sends a thank you text, and calls you family while emptying your pockets and locking your loved ones in a cage. And the most dangerous lie you can tell yourself is that being patient makes you noble. Patience without boundaries is just permission. I lost 7 years to a lie, but I gained the rest of my life back by refusing to ignore the quiet voice that said something wasn't right. So if you take anything from this, take this. Love isn't proven by how much you give. It's proven by what you're willing to confront. And the most iconic truth I can leave you with is this. The moment you stop being useful to a monster is the moment it finally loses power over you.